Welcome to another Telecom Innovator video from Light Reading, where we're introducing you to some of the people and companies moving the global communications industry forward. My name is Phil Harvey. I'm an editor here at Light Reading, and today I'm joined on the presentation by Jitu Patel. He is the SVP and General Manager of Security and Collaboration at Cisco. Jitu, hello.
Hey, Phil. So good to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to talk to you. We have a lot to talk about in terms of the future of work. So in general, with the pandemic, the future of work is has been required to be a lot more flexible. People are, Cisco and others use the term hybrid, but the general idea is that people who used to work in offices all the time now might be working from home or wherever else they feel most productive, and their offices are used sometimes, but not all the time, and things are just generally more flexible. We're seeing that happening. What's interesting about this is we're seeing it happening all over the globe, kind of at the same time. And I guess I'm curious, first of all, to start out with, is what does this new way of working look like to you, and how is your team considering this as it continues to add technologies and innovation and new features to the products there at Cisco?
Yeah, Phil, so the way that we see it is, you are right. We think about it as the future of work is definitively going to be hybrid. And what I mean by that is sometimes people work from the office, sometimes they're going to want to work from home, sometimes in the field or somewhere in the middle. And this mixed mode is actually a little bit harder to go out and crack the code on than the first two modes that we've had. So when everyone was working in the office, it was great, except for the occasional remote worker who felt like a second-class citizen. And then all of us overnight switched over to working from home. And when we started working from home, everyone was almost on a level playing field. And so it was easier than we thought. And in fact, we surprised ourselves with how much progress we were able to make from a business continuity standpoint. And the world didn't stop when everyone moved into a hibernation mode. And now when you think about this mixed mode, I think you have to really, really be careful about how do you make sure that everyone has an equal voice and feels included. And there's an inclusive dimension to this entire piece. So if there's 4 people in a conference room and 2 people happen to be remote, how do those 4 people not get an unfair advantage over the 2 people? And how do you also make sure that the 2 people don't feel left out because they can't read the person's body language or facial expression, because the conference room is a pretty long room, and what do you end up doing from that perspective? So what we've actually started seeing is a lot of innovation that's happening in the technology side to ensure that there's a level playing field for 3 billion digital workers around the planet, so that we can make sure that everyone has an equal voice, everyone has a seat at the table, regardless of what the table is. And I think it'll be a really fun next few years from an innovation standpoint on what will happen. And the more fun part is going to be that opportunity will get more evenly distributed, whereas right now geography is this massive limiter. And I just don't think it's a good way to be in 2021.
Yeah, I want to pick up on something you were mentioning there about the kind of the inclusiveness of the of the workplace, and making sure people's ideas are aired out, and that everyone's heard. The thing you bring up about facial expressions, kind of context clues around what somebody's saying, that's a big deal. And so how do you go about ensuring that that an inclusive experience is possible, even when we're in this kind of more flexible, more mixed working reality?
Yeah, well, one of the things we are lucky at Cisco is Cisco's mission statement is to power an inclusive future for all. So it's not just a D&I initiative on the side. Like, that is literally the reason for being for the company. How do you get the world more connected and make sure that there's a level playing field? And the way that we think about this is, regardless of geography or language preference or personality type, if you're an introvert or an extrovert, or proficiency from a tech perspective, we should be able to provide an even experience to people so that they can participate in the global economy. So I'll give you a few examples. Much easier to show you than tell you about it. So one of the areas is, I have a 84-year-old mother,
Mhm.
and she's not necessarily a tech savvy individual, but can she participate in a conversation as immersively as I can? And I'm a tinkerer, so I'll go around and I'll actually find different features in a product and I'll start using them. But she's not that way. She's scared of technology. And so
Mhm.
we built this capability called gesture recognition. So if I just do something like this, you'll see that the gesture shows up. Or if I
Yeah.
say, you know what, that's actually a bad idea, then the gesture shows up that way. Or if I say that's great, comment, I can actually show an applause. I want to raise my hand because I want to not interrupt the conversation, and then you'll
Oh
see
yeah.
on the top
I got the
left hand.
audio clue too, just so in case I was in the middle of a presentation and there was a bunch of people. Oh, that's great.
And so
That
those
works.
are examples of how you can make sure that people that are not as exploratory in nature in their personality are still able to use the capabilities, and we surface them up for them easier.
Mm.
Another example of inclusivity is make sure that, socioeconomic level is not something that's penalized, or, you're in a condition where there's just too much noise around you and you still want to come across professional. So I'll give you an example here. So this will be the first time that you'll see someone bust out a Theragun in the middle of
How do you
it.
know? No, kidding.
And so here's what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you with this capability of noise removal
Okay.
off, how loud this gets. And imagine this being not just a massager, but a vacuum cleaner,
Yeah.
background, lawnmower,
Any,
dishwasher, kid crying, right? And so I'm going
right.
to turn it on. You're going to see how loud this gets. And
Sure.
so that's pretty loud. And you can hear my voice and you can hear
Yeah.
this thing. Now I'm going to turn on noise removal. And you'll
Okay.
see how the noise goes away. It's still running, but my
Yeah.
speech is amplified. So this is it without it, and this is it with it.
Wow,
And
that's
so
remarkable. No, I
that's
can
an
hear the clarity is incredibly
example.
different.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's an example of artificial intelligence where we have been able to take background noise, segment that from human speech, amplify the speech, and suppress the noise. And that the beauty about that is, imagine someone who doesn't have a dedicated office, has roommates, is working
Yeah.
in from a place where they feel embarrassed that they don't, you can turn on your virtual background, you can take out noise removal, and you come across completely professional on the other side. So those are the kind of things that we want to make sure that we add from an inclusivity standpoint, where regardless of the socioeconomic level, or another one is language preference. Like, for example, right now we are recording this session and we have auto transcription turned on. So if you go to your button on the left-hand side, you can
Okay.
have closed captioning, which I just started showing in my screen. But the
Oh
beauty
yeah.
about the closed captioning is it's actually in real time translating my voice to text. But what's actually even more remarkable is if I click on this button, I can have 108 different languages, which I
Wow.
can start displaying. And so it'll dynamically translate to any language. So imagine a world where language is no longer a barrier because we can now all, communicate with each other in a different language. So these are all kinds of things to really think about having inclusivity at the forefront of how we're building the tech.
Oh, that's a great demo because it gives us the idea of, yeah, like you said, take away language as a barrier, take away the user interface as a barrier, and then somebody's technical savvy, and
Yeah.
then yeah, and then just the noise thing, the economic thing. That's a big one, especially the number of people that, when they were forced to work from home in the pandemic, especially, you know, younger folks who were younger in their professional career, they have roommates, they were in buildings and apartments and things that weren't really suited for work. They never imagined they'd be spending that much time at home, and it really did cause a distraction for people. So stuff like this can help out tremendously. So
One
what's
area that we're also innovating in, Phil, is how do you get introverts to have a voice? And so
mm,
one of the features that we're building is called Roundtable. So everyone in the room gets to speak once before anyone can speak twice, and we don't cut each other off. So literally, if you're in a meeting with 6 people, everyone would go on mute. There would be a timer that you'd set as a host, and everyone gets 2 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever you decide to set. And once everyone's spoken once, in a round robin fashion, that's when you start debating so that the people that are quiet also get a voice in the meeting. That's another example of being inclusive.
Yeah, that's an interesting one too, because the group dynamic definitely takes a different um, uh, takes a different shape depending on who else is in the group, like depending on what part of the company and that sort of thing. So that's pretty interesting. So how does let's talk about another kind of thing that's often talked about in the context of how we're changing the way we work, and that's the work-life balance, and then things like video fatigue. How does WebEx play a role in those two things that are also kind of you know uh, that we're sort of grappling with as life is changing?
Yeah, what we found was firstly, our chief people officer talks about this, that empathy is a superpower within the company. And what people are looking for right now is not just an obsession on productivity, but the other side of the coin for productivity that is the leading indicator of how productivity happens is employee well-being. And how do you focus on well-being? Because productivity is a derived outcome once you focus on someone's well-being. So, for example, one of the things that we saw with the pandemic is while people were productive, everyone was feeling a little bit burned out and they were feeling fatigued and tired. And so we've built capabilities in the product like, your preferred working hours are from 8 to 6, but 33% of your meetings are happening outside of those working hours. It'd be nice for you to have that data. Jeetu, you, in the past 17 meetings, 14 of them, you've been more than 5 minutes late to. It'd be really good for you to have the data so you can show. But the other thing that's really important over there, Phil, is that's great data for me to have. That is not data I want my boss to have. And so
Right.
one of the things that we're doing is we're honoring the privacy of the individual and not violating that. So if we provide insights to you, Phil, those insights are for you personally and not for your company, not for your boss, not for the organization as a whole, but specifically designed for you. And that we think is going to be a game changer in and of itself, which is provide these kind of insights on the behaviors and patterns of how you're working, how you can nurture relationships with others. These are 20 people in the company that I want to stay in touch with, and I haven't pinged 15 of them in the past 3 months. The system reminds you saying, hey, do you want to just ping them and say hello? Those kind of things are going to be pretty important for us to make sure that we can build deep relationships even when we're virtual.
Oh, that's great. The last question for this for this video is to talk about the idea of, once a workforce becomes more distributed and we kind of have that transition of moving back from everyone being at home to the workforce being more hybrid, as you say, and people a bit more distributed, moving around. Security becomes a concern because suddenly we're not centralized anymore, and neither are your security threats, and your attack surface, as the security people like to say, is is now global as opposed to just being in specific areas. And you have security right there in your title, so I think you'd be a good person to ask. How is Cisco helping to secure the new workforce as it's being defined, not just for Cisco but also for its customers?
Yeah, the way I see it is I'm in a very privileged position in the sense that I run the security business and I also run the collaboration business, and those two have a lot in common. But the thing about security that you have to keep in mind is the first step in security is not to be confused as a business and what your priority is. And we are very clear about the fact that our customers' data is their data. We honor their privacy. We think privacy is a basic human right, and that we are actually intent on making sure that our customers stay safe and secure when they're using our technology. So, for example, we announced a capability called ethical walls, where if there's, you're a regulated organization and one part of your organization, let's say a financial services company, the research arm doesn't need to talk to the investment banking arm. We can actually make sure that there is a barrier put between those two in communicating. The other thing that we can also have is, one of the things that we just recently added was, as you know, in security, as AI technology gets pretty prominent, sometimes you can have a deep fake that can crash into a meeting and you wouldn't even know that that's the person that's a deep fake. because the human eye couldn't tell the difference. So what we've done is we've had end-to-end encryption, but we also have a certificate that can be exchanged out of band so that you can verify that the person who's actually logged in. So think about a government hearing or voting or something that's going on, or laws being ratified. Those are really important capabilities and features that need to be added in. And so we are, we're very, very obsessed about making sure that, security is built in, not bolted on as an afterthought. And we don't have any conflict of interest in the business model.
That's great. Well, we've talked about a lot of technological innovations that are in WebEx right now, and that Cisco is working on. So if you're watching this video, maybe go back and watch it again and see all the things that are that, because we ran through them very quickly. Jitu Patel, thanks so much for being on this Telecom Innovator video. I do appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, Phil.